this
They get charged by the day.
this one.
Oh, I think we'll be.
I do
Yeah.
too, if we're still here.
All right.
That's a good goal, Erin.
All right, all right. Just, yeah, being cleared up front.
Yeah, I did 7.
6:30, do I hear 6:30? All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:02 PM. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call. We'll start with Heidi.
John MacArthur, Principal.
Tim Broderick.
Carol Locke.
Pam McLeod.
Karen Curry-Tonoff. Rebecca Johnson.
Ann Pierce.
And Heidi, can you just move your microphone? Will it come in at all? Okay. All right. Agenda review.
I move we accept the agenda as submitted.
We have a non-public?
You will.
Do I hear a second?
second.
Mine's like right here. Okay. Any discussion on the agenda, amendments to the agenda? Okay, seeing none.
Carol, yes.
I'm a yes, sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I'm forgetting my words tonight. It's been, I guess it's summer.
It's okay.
Public input. I see quite a few members of the public here. We usually do public input at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. So if you have a specific concern or something you want to address or ask, please feel free to step up and let us know, or you can wait till the end as well. Everybody good? Okay, great. All right, informational items. We'll start with, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'll take a motion on the approval of the minutes from June 14th.
So moved. So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or edits?
I had a couple of requests for edits or additions. So on the minutes of June 14th, on page 2, line 14, if I can find that myself. So it has to, this motion had to do with the grading. And I just thought the minutes should reflect that we did have quite a lengthy discussion about this, and part of that was, providing information to parents and education to parents, and I just thought that it says no discussion on line 14, and we did have a lengthy discussion, so I like a summary of the discussion there.
Okay.
And then the same minutes, page 4. Page 4, line 13. Oh, so this was a motion about something we discussed in non-public. But the way this is worded, it sounds like we're waiving the notification requirement altogether, but we were waiving it in the particular circumstance, so I think that should be
For a
added.
specific family.
Yeah. That's all I had for June.
Okay. Any other items for discussion?
On July, page 1, line 39, it's just a word missing that we are sealing the minutes of non-public session.
Okay.
Is it?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Should we have it as amended? Unanimous as amended, yeah. Okay. All right, reports. Tim, let you take this.
Hello.
Oh, sorry, I skipped right over financials. I saw June and July and thought it was the minutes. Heidi, we'll let you take this.
Good deal.
Is it in the packet? Oh, there it is, okay, all right. So here's my report. Any questions? I don't have any questions.
I had a question on June, page 8, which is buildings and grounds. I cannot read this on my screen. But it had to do with the equipment replacement line. And I'm sure we talked about those numbers and there's grants involved or something, but I just wanted to get an explanation of what's going on in that line.
It's $195,000 basically encumbrance.
Yes. And also over budget.
Thinking it has something to do with probably like the boiler, but.
Well, there was in June, there was a $71,000 roughly spending, so I just wanted to. My memory was not helping me understand what went on this line.
I know Alliance Mechanical, I'm thinking that's the boiler.
Okay.
Which was 90,000. There's another one in here too that I will have to look up, Worthington Direct. But I can get back to you on these.
Okay, yeah, and just to understand what's still in the encumbrance, what's left that's still encumbered would be great to know. Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? Okay. You good for July, Karen?
July's boring.
All right. Now we'll move on to reports. Looks like we have a thank you card from Ruby Hawkins, who retired. Thank you, Ruby. And another one from Pam Forbes. Excellent. I can take the School Board Association Delegate Assembly. The Delegate Assembly is normally in January, but the Executive Board of the School Boards Association made a decision to move that up to October, which is where it was years ago. But a lot of that is because of the timing of the resolutions and being able to, you know, when the school board votes on the resolutions, being able to get them in front of the legislature. Having the meeting in January was a little tight, so basically we're working a year in advance. So they're moving everything up until October. They're looking for proposed resolutions right now, which is earlier than usual, so that's in your packet for information if there's anything you'd like to bring forward to the state. We would want to bring it forward here first. And then it looks like we have a proposed meeting calendar as well. Continuing the second Monday of each month. This is our normal spot. I know for the newbies this wasn't our normal spot last year, but we're back here, yay. And 5 o'clock. Does the time work for everybody?
Works fine for me.
Okay, me too. All right.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody else needed to go later, being later would be okay with me too.
I can
But-
go either way. I don't know
But
if
at
5
5
o'clock
o'clock-
works for the public as well. A lot of people are still working.
Yeah,
so
it
we might
seems like
want
it's a
to
little
take that
early
into
for people to get
consideration.
to. I think that's maybe one reason why we moved it.
It's nice, I think it's nice to be early because if we have long agendas, we can make sure we're out a little bit earlier, but.
I think it'll be nice in the winter when
Mhm.
it's
I guess the question
dark
is, does
and
it accommodate parents to be
Right.
here this early? Because they're working and they
Even if
would
we
need to
push
come
it
in.
to 5:30, I mean, I think that's still a good middle ground, because
Mhm.
it was at 6 before, so we
I mean,
just
I
make it
like
in the
5
middle.
o'clock, don't get me wrong, but we are supposed to be here for the parents too, so I just don't know. 5:30 sounds like a good compromise.
Yeah, I agree. I think 5:30 probably accommodates the public more.
Okay. All right, we can do that. I don't think we need a
Doesn't
motion
matter
on
to
that.
me.
Now it's Tim's turn.
Hello again. So in your shared drive and on the table, you have an outline of my report for tonight. It's the same 3 items that are on the posted agenda, starting with a brief report on shared central office services. As I told the joint board in the spring, we're really focusing on internal operations of the central office. We're not here to mess with the schools. We have a lot to do, and that's been entirely our focus for the last 6 or 7 weeks, and will probably be our focus for most of this year. At the moment, we're moving people, our technology, furniture, files, things like that. We have, I think, 67 boxes, I heard today, set aside for shredding. So apparently, some of our SAUs were slightly behind on records retention, but we're getting on top of it. It's one of the nice things about this project. And we should be, the people are all in their new offices as of today. Everything else will get there within the next couple of weeks. But we seem to be pretty much on schedule. Certainly, if you have any questions, we can talk about those things, but I don't think there's anything here that's new to any of you who have been a part of planning the shared services initiative. The second thing I have on my report, you actually have a draft document also on the table and in your shared drive. Big red letters at the top, it says draft. This is for your review, not necessarily approval, and I would even say it's not ready. If you wanted to approve it, it wouldn't be for tonight anyway. But this is a description of my expectations that I'll be sharing with Alton administrators tomorrow at the first day of their annual administrative retreat regarding how staff communicate with students in particular, but students and families using electronic means of communication and social media. Yes, this kind of thing is necessary. This is a combination of policy, law, and the New Hampshire Educators Code of Conduct items, but by creating this synopsis, I think it's important because I notify staff proactively sometime near the beginning of the year, if not on opening day, maybe on our October staff day, regarding what kinds of things I might consider appropriate and inappropriate conduct, so that everyone has been reasonably notified and warned. I've seen too many situations over the last 3 to 5 years where, because of the way our world has changed, people just start to think it's okay to send text messages to anybody, just for example, including students, and it's not. And that is covered by the New Hampshire Educators Code of Conduct, and I think to be fair to our staff, we need to notify people that's not okay. We provide ways to communicate with students and their families, and we expect our staff to use those means of electronic communication. So I don't want to belabor it, but I've given you a copy so you can have some nice leisure reading there if you want to take your time with it sometime in the next few weeks. The last thing that I included here, it is in your packet, so you received it. It's not on the table. You received it with your packet last week. And this is an FAQ provided by the State Attorney General in response to the passage of HB 2, which is commonly known as the Divisive Concepts Law. We'll be sharing this with teachers at all of our schools on opening days. I think it does a really great job of explaining to our staff what is and isn't covered or allowed under this law, and I think it will relieve a lot of people's concerns. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, please do. If you have any questions, certainly, please ask. It's also easy to find on the internet if anyone wants to look up the Attorney General's Divisive Concepts Guidance.
Did,
Google it.
did I see, did New Hampshire School Board Association also have some guidance on this or document? I seem to think I saw one.
Most likely.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
pretty, it's being actively discussed right now. I'm
Yeah.
sure that there's something, yeah. John? Mm-hmm. Principal's report?
Right on. Okay, so, first of all, if you made it through the back entrance today, you got a chance to get a sneak peek of the building and all the work going on, but if you went through the front, you may not have seen. It's been pretty darn busy around here this summer, as you can imagine. If you do have a moment, for those folks that are here, check out the mural on the new cafeteria wall. Mike Durkee worked with our summer school kids, and every last soul in this building put their hands on that wall. It is beautiful and
That's
something
very
that's going to
cool.
last.
It is nice,
very
yeah.
cool.
And it's totally something custom to us here. And so much thought and care was put into, choosing a design that really was reflected right down to the colors of sunsets over a lake and lilacs. And there's a lot of deep thought into this one. So, and everyone, I didn't hear a negative thing. Everyone loved partaking in it, and everyone has loved seeing a nice pop of color finally in our building. So that was there. Summer school program went really well. It was really nice. We had over 50 students. Attendance was great. Kids were awesome, smiling faces every single day, walking through. It was fantastic, so thank you. Around the building, some of our ESSER 3s started to arrive, so our IFPs, our interactive flat panels, TVs are replacing the smart boards and things. A lot of them are starting to get antiquated, so we were able to seize this opportunity through ESSER, and so far so good. Our B&G crew and our IT staff have been working hand in hand to get these all up and ready. It was pretty scary the day they were delivered, just because that's 34 flat panel, 86 flat panels on 2 different trucks coming from
On that construction?
from Texas, going over, and it wasn't even there. It was going over through the parking lot over by Ackerley's. It was, needless to say, I'm usually not out for deliveries. I was out watching those deliveries for the entire morning, making sure. But the guys did phenomenal, assisting them getting off the truck, and everything's intact, and they're all going up around the building, slowly, not even slowly but surely, at a rapid pace. I want to pretty darn quick. I did a training with my admin team on Eureka, just a basic, but more scheduled for staff, and also for illustrative math for 6 through 8, coming up this month. The admin team is super excited for our leadership retreat, starting tomorrow, and then also on Wednesday to get down to some of the nitty-gritty to get this year going and get it going strong. And then I just included some important dates on here, as well as the open house, hoping, is for the first from 5 to 6:30 like normal. And again, fingers crossed for normalcy. We're hoping we can do like the hot dogs and all that, and have some fun too. So
Are you planning the open house for indoors or outdoors?
what we usually do is we have kind of a combination of both for the open
Right.
house, where they, students can with their families walk, see where their classroom is, so that they get those jitters out, see where they're going, and then outside, out on the basketball court, having the hot dogs and the water and whatever else.
How was that shaped last year during the height of the COVID?
There was nothing last year.
There was nothing at all?
Yeah.
I'm just curious about masks, or are we doing that?
It all depends on,
Depends on.
You'll tell us?
yeah.
Okay, I mean for the open house, I was asking about open house. Okay.
I think we would follow whatever guidance we
Okay.
decide when we get to that point. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Right.
Yeah.
For the
That's
school.
why it's not even it's not even up yet, because
Okay.
it's pending tonight what we're doing, whether we even can do that.
Sounds reasonable, thank you.
Sure. And that's pretty much my report. Any questions, other questions?
Thank you.
Sure.
Facilities report, as noted, I just noticed that it includes LEDs, which should be a huge electricity savings on the ceiling, so that's great.
We're sitting under them right now. They've already
And an
finished.
upgrade to interior locks. So that must be for student safety in the classrooms
You
in
got it.
case of an intruder type of situation.
So due to the multiple expansions of this building since 1956, one of the things was that there were, I don't know how many different keys. I mean, in this building, and in an emergency, trying to get into a building, we don't have time to figure that. So it's taken a long time to get this done. Actually, since I've been, it was one of the first things I noticed here. I'm like, oh my goodness, what do we do? Like, and so now we are finally on a unified system throughout the building, and yes, teachers' doors and all that are on the same. That'll all operate. And the exterior, of course, we're on this white like we have
Okay.
for years.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Moving on to action items. Looks like we have a stay open plan on the agenda.
I titled it Stay Open Report.
Update.
Much to some of your, or update, much to some of your displeasure, possibly. I'm going to recommend that you not make any big decisions tonight, but that you have a chance to process this information, hear input, if there is any, from the public. It gives you a couple of weeks to watch the local data. I'll talk about what I see as the important differences between local, regional, and broader-based data. Honestly, in my opinion, if you made a decision tonight, it's too soon. That's my opinion. So that's going to be my recommendation when we get to it. Sorry to spoil the fun. We'll get to it in about 10 minutes. But first, I'll walk you through this, and we have it, I think, on the live YouTube stream. And there are either copies available, or hopefully people can see the board up there. The first slide after the introduction is about transportation, and what I have here is about 7 topics regarding how we ran schools last year. And I think I would want to preface this whole thing by restating, and although I wasn't here in June to be the one who said it, I'm going to guess that you all said the same thing here in June that we said in the other 2 school districts that serve these communities, and that was that we were looking forward to a quote-unquote normal school year. That's what we wanted to get back to. It's what our teachers want, it's what our parents want, it's what our students want, and that's been our goal. I feel like the earth has shifted under our feet just a little bit in the last few weeks, but we're going to talk about that. So first, transportation. This is an area where we don't have a decision to make. You do not have a decision to make. We've been notified by the bus company that due to a federal mandate, they are requiring face coverings on buses, at least through September 13th. Whether that'll be extended by the Fed or not, I have no idea. But as of right now, that's not a question for us. We've been told by them that that's what's going to happen. The Department of Health and Human Services for the state has confirmed that they also interpret this federal mandate the same way, meaning that DHHS agrees with our bus contractor that this is something that they need to do and we don't have a choice about. I led with that because it's one of the few things that we're not asking you to make a decision on. It is, though, the third bullet here, I think worth noting that unlike last year when you reduced the number of children who could ride each bus at a time, we don't have to do that now.
Are
So
they gonna have any requirements around families sitting together, or are they gonna do it by grade level like they've always done?
we can choose to do what we want, but there is no guidance or mandate
Okay.
that's going to have us do any of those things. And I think the theme that you're going to pick up as we go through these, I think there are 7 topics here, might be 8. The theme that you're going to pick up is that a lot of the things that schools did last year, based on the best available information last summer and the guidance we received from the CDC and the state, by spring, a lot of that guidance was revised. Instead of 6 feet of physical distance, we were instructed to try to get to 3 feet of physical distance where possible. And even if we couldn't do that, as long as face coverings were being universally worn. That ended up being the mitigation protocol that seemed to be the most effective. That's definitely consistent with what DHHS is telling us now. I actually have a couple of quotes here at the end from DHHS about their stance on what schools should do, and I'll spoil this one for you too. They do not intend to issue guidance for schools.
No, of course not.
They're not going to.
Live free or
And they've
die.
told us that.
What a surprise.
In the end, I think that the question you're going to get to is going to be about face coverings. I don't think it's going to be a lot of other things, although there are a couple of nuances that we do need to cover here. Can we go on?
Tim, can I
Thank
just
you.
ask on the
Please.
bus question, what is the direct impact on families of that change? Are there changes to schedules compared to last year? Will the routes be, didn't we kind of have to do some double routes or something for
We
a
did.
while?
That we
Yeah.
did double, because of the spacing. Definitely.
Yep, you'll be able to, we actually have a meeting coming up with the bus company. I'm kind of getting to know you meetings at the same time we're transacting this business, since I've only been here for a few weeks, but we have something scheduled with First Student in the next week or two, this Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday.
Terrific, Thursday. I knew we had it.
So we're just basically anticipating busing to be a little bit more efficient this year than last year,
Yes.
maybe a lot more? Yeah,
I think a
okay,
lot
good.
more. I think you'll be essentially back to normal at the elementary school. Now, what I understand from the past is that students from the high school rode the same buses as the elementary students. That will not be the case this year,
Okay.
because you will recall, because you all serve also on the joint board for the high school, that the high school will continue to have a later start. So there will be distinct routes, but that should mean that we can put all of the elementary students on the bus at the same time and get them here in one trip. So I'm not sure it'll be a bad thing.
That'll be much shorter, probably. That's great.
They'll probably publish them in the Baysider. That's what they normally do. Publish the routes.
In terms of sanitation of the building, there was a lot of hubbub around this kind of thing, and I don't mean to make light of it, because again, we were all dealing with the best available information we had at the time, but there was a lot about sanitizing hard surfaces, and we were giving teachers and students disinfectant wipes to use between periods and things like that. At least that was happening at high schools. And the DHHS guidance as of a couple of weeks ago wrote, and I quote, I'm reading from the bottom of this slide, cleaning once a day is usually enough to remove potential virus that may be on surfaces. So we can accomplish what we need to in terms of building sanitation just through regular custodial work that will continue to include antibacterial fogging. We have the equipment, we have the supplies. There's no big change here, except that to whatever degree, and I'm sorry, I don't know the details in Alton Central School, but to whatever degree teachers and children were being asked to help clean the building, that won't be necessary. We're still going to keep the signs up that promote hand washing and taking enough time and using soap and that kind of thing, but I think that those things should probably always be up in an elementary school or a high school.
Just a point for consideration and thinking about, I'm hearing a lot through my day job about concerns about how much all the disinfecting, when it's not really needed for surfaces, has pretty much been proven the virus doesn't transmit on surfaces, that this overkill of disinfecting might be having some negative impacts on childhood immunity, immune response, and so that just might be something to look into before the next meeting. That I know in Concord, we aren't going to be doing the fogging so much because of that. So just something to look at.
I had a question also, I guess it relates to building sanitation. I didn't see it anywhere else in here regard to air circulation. I think it would be helpful to, get a summary of, okay, where were we when all this started? What have we done since? What do we know? What testing have we done? To really get an understanding of how much hopefully we've improved air circulation and quality, to take that into account in considering all this.
I can tell you, again, with my limited knowledge of this school so far, that the conceptual plan for a ventilation project funded by the ESSER 3 grant was approved by DOE last week.
Oh, great.
Now, that's different from having the project approved. The
Yeah.
conceptual plan has been approved. The ESSER 3 requirements, it's hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, but that's the first one. So there is a ventilation project
Yes.
here. John could tell you which spaces it's for. Maybe everybody in the room except for me could tell you which spaces it's for, but we're on the right track with that.
Yeah, well, I'm more interested in where we are heading into the school year.
Yeah.
You know, and compared to where we were last
Change
year,
any
you know,
ventilation.
improvements that have been made.
Okay, I have a note to ask Sean Astot, so
I mean,
I'll do
we'll
that.
have to, without having Sean here to tell you I mean, other than, of course, all the filtration has been upgraded to the MERV filters and everything. That
Right.
none of that has changed since the get-go. Like, we just upped everything. But as far as any of the major structural, yeah, that's exactly what Tim was talking about. That's coming. It's just not here yet.
Yeah, I don't think there were any HVAC projects this summer,
Right.
right? So basically the same as
Planning.
last
And as
year.
I recall, we didn't really have any specific air exchange guidelines to even follow. I mean, we weren't given that, but,
Right.
yeah, I think it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to and to understand if there are parts of the building still in need. Are there areas we're concerned about, especially if there are going to be more students in classrooms, more motion throughout the building will be an issue too if kids are going to be changing classrooms.
I know difference in at this time last year versus now is we do have air conditioners in every single classroom at this point, so which we didn't down in the 3-4 wing before
I don't think they can hear you,
as
John.
well. Way too quiet. Sorry, I'm actually not known for being quiet.
Oh, come on, John.
Yeah, so AC, is that better? Sorry about that. Yeah, so AC in all the pretty much all the classrooms that I can think of is there's AC everywhere, including the 3-4 wing, which is the newest wing, also down there as well. So I mean, there are improvements, but definitely major HVAC. That's definitely coming. It's just not here yet. Other than, of course, the CAF, which was done before the start of last year. So.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see some kind of summary and some specific information that we can look at as, the building as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Would you like me to have Sean at the next meeting? Because he could.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
mean,
I think we
that's
should look at-
important
Okay.
when we make decisions about this to have some more specifics. Thank you.
Yeah, that
Sure
would be
thing.
great. Thank you, John.
You got it.
So regarding screening, daily screening and screening testing, DHHS is not currently recommending screening testing for childcare programs, which in their definition includes kindergarten through 12th grade schools. We stopped daily screening in the other SAUs late last year. Whether the board would want to continue with either parent-reported screening or temperature scanning at entrances would be entirely up to you, but at this point, I would have to say that that's not among the mitigation protocols that's being recommended. But at the same time, we're in an environment now where DHHS is saying we're not really recommending much of anything. It's up to you. I think our experience, and again, I can't speak specifically to Alton Central School, but our experience at the other two schools where I served last year was that we did catch students who had come to school with symptoms of illness, whether it was COVID or something else, but it wasn't through our screening protocols. It was through our nurses and teachers looking at kids and talking to them and saying, "Oh, Johnny, you have the sniffles, go see the nurse." And then Johnny would go see the nurse and indeed would have the sniffles and maybe a temperature. And in this environment, that meant Johnny would be sent home. We'd call mom and dad and say, "Johnny has to go."
I wasn't here when the temperature scanner was put in place. I wasn't part of the board. Was that a huge cost item to have that? So if we,
Yes.
Grant funded, right?
It was
grant
grant funded though. It was not
Well,
out of
no, I'm
Alton
not
budget, but yeah,
questioning that
it was
part.
grant funded. yes.
however, it's different than the high school. The high school kids would log in. I drove my granddaughter to school many a time where she's logging in 2 minutes before she goes into school to say, "No, I feel great." It's a totally different process. I'm not sure it's worth canning that process. If you spent a lot of money on it, it's, could still scan temperatures when we come in. It's not going to be, because anyone with a temperature should be seen by the nurse anyway, period. So I'm not sure it'd be worth canning that whole process of getting rid of the scanner if we already spent money on it.
Is there any operating cost to it? Probably not.
No, other than the initial cost to purchase them, no. And really, if you walked in the front door tonight, you were scanned. I mean,
Right.
It's like it's not even there. So, we have those processes in place. We have the one for the back door still set up. That's not a,
I don't think it
I agree.
invades
We-
anyone's privacy at all.
Invested in those and should continue to use those unless there's complaints. I can also give you the big district perspective, which is the daily kind of screening where students are filling out forms. Doesn't work. Zero. Is there any consideration of having the nurse certified to do COVID testing here at school?
If
Is
she's
that-
not, then absolutely. I didn't know that, but yeah, it's easy to do. And rapid tests are very inexpensive.
I think that's been one of the sticking points with parents, from what I've heard, is that they've had to go off campus to get a test. There's a delay in the rapid, doesn't always happen locally at the local Alton Clear Choice. So I think that would be very prudent to have here so that parents would know right away.
Yeah, we did it.
oh,
We did it
jeez.
last spring. It was great. We did
Yeah.
a lot,
Awesome.
actually. It worked
Yeah.
out beautifully.
Yeah.
You wanna call April?
Tomorrow.
Okay, yeah. Well, got it.
So Tim, did that include close contact testing right on the spot, or?
So, our nurse was bound by, at the time, the CDC and DHHS's guidance for when the test should be used, which changes. So I can't even tell you what that guidance would be right now. I think people had to be symptomatic in order to use a test. But remember, when we first started doing this, there was scarcity around the tests themselves. Now I think you can go into Walmart and for $20 you can get a 2-pack of rapid
Yeah, you
tests.
can do the home, at
Right.
home, yeah.
It's changed a lot, very rapidly. So we'll find out, of course, and use whatever the current guidance is. But I think there's no question that that's something our school nurse should be able to do. Again, it worked out very, very well at our other.
I think parents would appreciate it.
Awesome.
Here we go. Okay, physical distancing. This changed last spring. Last summer, we were told to rearrange cohort and class sizes in order to maintain 6 feet of distance in all of our spaces. In March or April, it's a little bit of a blur to me at this point. We had new guidance, both from the Fed, from the CDC, and from the state, DHHS, telling us, try to get to 3 feet. In fact, schools last spring were given a deadline, and I want to say it was the April 19th deadline, but at this point, again, it's a little bit of a blur in retrospect, to rearrange our cohorts and not to have more than 3 feet unless we could get everybody in and still maintain that. So what I think most schools did, what our other 2 schools did, and I'm going to guess all 3 of us, is as long as we could get to at least 3 feet of distance, we just did everything we could in every space. Going into this year, the largest 2 classes in Alton Central School are both 5th grade classes. There are 20 students in one and 21 students in the other. And whether that'll allow them to get to exactly 3 feet or 2 feet 10 inches, I'm not sure sitting here today, but it's something that the principal and I have been discussing as recently as this afternoon.
Confirm 3.
And he says we can get to 3, or maybe one of the teachers is here.
You got it.
So we can meet the current guidance in what I'll refer to as normal operations. We can bring all the kids in if they want to be here and put them in classrooms, and we can be at 3 feet. If there is a level of community spread that requires first level mitigation by the board, or if you decide you'd rather have me decide, I would understand that. It won't be physical distancing. it'll be face coverings. That's the first thing that DHHS and the CDC are telling us to try if we need to mitigate risk. So that's physical distancing.
I don't want to make anybody or ask anybody to jump through 1,000 hurdles again this summer, because I know what last summer's planning was like. But when we come to the next meeting and we talk about face coverings, it might be nice to know for each classroom which ones can be done with 6-foot distancing or greater than 3-foot distancing, because the 3-foot distancing assumes face coverings.
Exactly.
And so if for some reason we're just, I don't know yet where we're gonna fall, but if there's a greater distance and maybe no face coverings, that might be something we might wanna consider. So it's just another piece of the puzzle, I think, that we're gonna need to know.
My recollection of our conversation about it was that 6 feet was only possible because we had 100 fewer students here.
Right, yeah.
That's
Yep.
correct.
That's what we were told by Pam Stiles.
The next
I fully
topic.
expect that to be the case, yeah.
Next topic is lunches. If you were making decisions tonight, which you're entitled to do if you choose to, even though I'm recommending that you don't, I think this is one of the two areas where you might do something. It's not possible to have 3 feet of distancing in the cafeteria the way it normally operates, and there are no face coverings during lunch.
Right.
It's the nature of eating. So there's likely to be some kind, if we need any mitigation at all, which we may, then there's likely to be some change to how lunch is handled. So the principal's been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, and one option is to try a rotation, an A and B rotation, where half the classes spend a week eating in their classrooms while the others can go to the lunchroom. We had a lot of success at the high school putting plexiglass barriers on the lunch tables, which allows you to put kids right across from each other, because distance then doesn't matter because they're actually divided. They're still with other kids. They can still talk. It worked all year. The high schoolers didn't seem to mind at all.
Did we have any community spread from that lunch scenario at the high school last year?
So I don't suspect a single case of COVID was spread to a student at the high school. I have no reason to suspect that. It's hard to be sure.
Right.
You know, some people, we had, hold on, I gave you the number here on one of these slides. We had 10 cases among high school students last year. As best our nurse could figure out through contact tracing, none of them contracted the disease at the school.
So would you do plexiglass in addition to the AB schedule? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so the AB schedule, which John could talk more intelligently about, but I think the basics make sense, right?
Right.
You take half as many kids and you send them down there, and therefore there's more space, and then you also put plexiglass on the tables. It creates at least some semblance of that normalcy in that social situation, and then the next week, those kids stay in their classrooms and the other kids get to go to the lunchroom, or whatever schedule the principal chooses, but I think that's at least his latest thinking.
Yeah, that's correct.
It creates some coverage issues that we'll have to talk with the teachers about, but we know who to talk to, we know who represents them, and I'm sure we can work it out.
Would the board like to take a vote on this particular item? Tim's indicated that it might be something we can take care of now so they can finish their planning.
I prefer to wait and look at the whole thing as a package.
I agree.
Okay, all right.
Okay, the next two slides are both about face coverings. That's what we're all here for, I think. So I don't know who was the first one in the state, but I tried to be the first last spring to say if I never see another face covering, it'll be too soon. In an ideal world, we will start school with a normal schedule, maybe do something with the lunchroom, and we will tell families that face coverings are an option. However, if the region, and we can talk about how we want to define region, is experiencing substantial or high community transmission, which the county is right now today, then I may sit here and actually recommend to you that you consider mandatory use of face coverings by everybody inside the building. Those are sort of the two extremes. Is it's entirely optional or it's entirely mandated. And I know there are other places you could end up in between. This is a board decision. In a survey at the end of last May, and one of my recommendations tonight is that we do this same survey again in the next few days, because I'm not convinced the results would be the same. But in a survey at the end of last May, 14% of staff and parents who responded said that they would want face masks on September 1st. Nobody wanted face coverings outside. I don't think there's any current guidance that would indicate a need for face coverings outside, no matter what happens. Again, the guidance is different. Maybe it's because the CDC and DHHS have learned more about how this virus is transmitted. For whatever reason, though, there's no guidance that would lead us to require face coverings outside. At least there's nothing that would lead me to recommend that to you. On the next slide regarding face coverings, I give you a little bit of data here. Last year, with the mitigation that was in place here, there were 13 cases of coronavirus at Alton Central School. There are 0 currently among the school population. And for comparison, the high school that serves Alton had 10 cases last year. All have recovered, as well as the 13 at the elementary school. All have recovered, and there are 0 currently. The Department of Health and Human Services, on its map today, reports that Alton has a suppressed number of cases, which means it's not 0, but it's 4 or fewer. My experience with the Department of Health and Human Services data is that they can lag behind by a week or 10 days. So think of that data point as a week or so ago, even though it's the data that's available today. And in another week or so, we'll find out what today's situation was, higher or lower. That's just the way the DHHS website dashboard has been working throughout this period. There's also a note here on the second slide regarding face covering, and I'm going to come back to the 4th bullet after this, but it defines what low, moderate, substantial, and high transmission rates are for those who don't have it committed to memory yet. So DHHS does not give us transmission rate data at the town level. They give us public health network region. We're in the Winnipesaukee Public Health Network. They give us region level data, or they give us county level data. The Winnipesaukee Public Health Network region is slightly larger than Belknap County. So I choose Belknap County because it's at least smaller, so it's closer to just us, but it's a lot more than just us, right? It's Laconia and Guilford and all the towns in the county. So the current transmission rate as of, again, today, and this uses a 14-day running average, is 122.3 new cases per 100,000 population. So if you look down at the note, what's 122.3? It's high. So test positivity is at 4.4, which is low, right? Because test positivity, if you look down at the bottom below 5%, is considered low. So using their little formula, they take a high rate of new cases per 100,000 and a low rate of test positivity and determine that the county is in a substantial transmission state. I didn't create the system, I'm reporting it. So that's where we are today, and bluntly, it's one of the reasons that I'm not suggesting you make a decision tonight. Because if you made a decision, if I recommended decisions to you tonight, they'd have to be based on substantial spread in this area, and I don't want to do that unless we have to.
I just wanted to say a couple things about this, because I've been thinking about it a lot, obviously. I would love to make face coverings optional, but my understanding of masks is that they protect the people around you, not the person wearing the mask. Therefore, I feel like we all either go all in or not. Obviously, it can still be optional, but for us to state it's optional would be contradictory also to CDC, which we've been following all along. Since I've been on the board, it's always been the CDC recommendations, and they're recommending face masks for K through 12. I would say that the children who can't be vaccinated should be face covers, because that's a choice. The vaccination's a choice when they're 12 or older. If they choose not to get their children vaccinated, that's a choice. However, the mask being a choice isn't protecting their child. It's protecting other children, from what I understand. I'm not a medical person at all, but that's what people keep drilling into my head. So I'm concerned about the American Pediatric Association and the CDC recommending masks at this point, and that we ignore it now after doing CDC recommendations all through our plan. That's just a concern I've had all along, is are we still going to follow CDC, or are we going to go rogue? Obviously, I know there are several parents who do not want the kids wearing masks. I agree, outdoors is at this point a moot point. Kids should be outside playing, they don't need masks. I mean, the sports, there were track kids wearing masks when they didn't even go near anyone. So I understand that. But I am concerned that we're not going to follow CDC recommendations. That's just my piece.
You know, I've been thinking about the same thing, Carol, and I think also the American Academy of Pediatrics is recommending face coverings. I think there is the issue of the younger kids not being able to be vaccinated. Everyone's in the same building here. We weren't in the building with a Delta variant yet. And, you know, I may have said this a lot when we had this last discussion. You know, if you're a family and you're bringing your children out into public, you know, you're making that decision of where you are and where you're going. We're bringing multiple families into a building where there's not a choice of who you're with and who you're near and what you're doing and where you're going. So I think that's where I look to when I'm thinking about this, is our responsibility for bringing everyone into the same space, and, you know, what's the best scenario for that, for safety.
Sorry, go ahead.
And, you know, I agree with Tim that we're in a flux situation right now, not knowing really which direction things are going, and it would be hard to make a decision tonight, so I'm grateful that we can wait.
Right, that was my point. I think we need to wait.
4 more slides. You just talked about what's on some of them. The next one is about the school schedule. This board, from what I understand, determined a month or 2 ago that it would not offer a fully remote option locally run by our teachers, as was offered last year. I have been exploring an option. If there are families, when we redo this survey from late May over the next few days, if there are more families who say we would prefer to elect a completely remote option, I've been exploring a solution that might allow us to do that without disrupting the way the school runs, without requiring teachers to have, for one example, both students in the classroom and students online, or without requiring us to have certain teachers become remote teachers, or without any of that. Being able to just run the school the way we run the school, and then have something separate. Now, if that number is 150, that probably doesn't work. If that number is 15 or 20 or 30, then I might be able to give you an option for those families. There's not a VLAX option. VLAX is a high school program. So what I've been looking
they're
into is
offering
similar to VLAX, but it's a national program.
I think VLAX is offering, they're offering elementary now.
Do they have openings? I'm sorry if
Well,
I'm wrong
last year
about
there were
that.
absolutely 0 openings, so.
Yeah, they were full.
Oh, they were full, but they do.
they may be
Yeah, they have
full.
offerings, but
They do
definitely
now.
last year they were swamped and people weren't getting in, I know that.
I don't think they're an option. I'll confirm it.
Okay.
I'll get in touch with them. I apologize for that. I'll confirm it, but I don't think they're an option.
So one thing for the board to be cognizant around VLAX specifically is that we had this discussion in my district today. Last year, it was waived that, students either attend, unless you're just doing one class, but students typically either attend VLAX or their school, and the money follows the student. That was waived last year, so we were able to keep the student and the state money coming our direction while students attended VLAX remotely. My understanding is they're waiting for that decision from the state, but folks are pretty pessimistic that that is going to be continued for another year. So certainly if a child chose VLAX, we would lose that adequacy money for that student.
And I apologize for being vague about it. I actually have a conference call tomorrow afternoon with these folks, but the option that, if it is an option that I would present to you, would mean that we retain the students in our enrollment. Provide this as a temporary service that we would pay for. It's easily grant funded under these circumstances, but we retain the students. And their intention would be to return to us, I believe. That would be my expectation. But again, this really comes back down to how many families have changed their minds, if any, since last, May, when, I have the number here, how many said, where did I put it? Maybe I think it was 13. I think the number was 13 anyway. Families who said, we'd rather our student have a remote option on September 1st next year. But that was months ago. I think we really need to know what that number is today. So I intend to find that out.
And if we make mass optional, they may choose the remote. In other words, that would become their option at that point. If we decided as a board to make face coverings optional, there'll be parents who will say, then I don't want my child in school.
So we'll phrase the
honestly
question
think-
on the survey with each condition.
I think that would happen either way.
Either
If
way.
masks were required, I think that would happen as well.
On the
It would be
opposite
nice
way.
to have the students still associated with the school in some way so that that connection, we could just
Right.
keep the connection to the students and the check-ins and just be able to, sort of keep track of them and that kind of thing.
On the next slide, and some of you just spoke about this amongst yourselves, yes, we've been reading and hearing reports about spread of the Delta variant of the coronavirus. DHHS's number one mitigation recommendation is for people to get vaccinated. For the adults who work in the building, there was some additional protection from the federal government next year. If anybody needed to quarantine or be out sick, they were entitled to paid administrative leave, at least from the beginning of the school year through December 31st. That's no longer the case. So if employees have chosen not to be vaccinated, which is certainly their right, and end up sick, they will be allowed to use their accrued sick time. There is no additional federal protection that gives them more free time off. But in an elementary school, the students are the real issue here, because as you all know, it is not possible to be vaccinated if you're under 12 years old. And that's the vast majority of ACS students, which means they can't be vaccinated, whether their parents would want them to be or not. Doesn't matter. It's not the question. It's not available. So I think as much as and I know everyone can tell, I'm sort of straddling the fence here tonight. I think you can tell what I'd like, and I think you can tell that I'm sensing you might not be able to do what I'd like. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the board, but we have an obligation to help parents take care of the kids, and I think the controversy will come down to is the school helping, or should the parents be doing it themselves? And that's a controversy that just needs to play out, and it's one of the reasons that I'm recommending, starting on the next slide, that you don't make a decision tonight, because it gives the community a couple of weeks to talk to each other. And those conversations may not all be pleasant, but they're necessary. The second point I have here is that I will do my job, which is to continue to monitor community transmission. I've jotted down some notes based on your questions tonight. I'll get answers to those questions, some additional information. I'll make sure that I cite both the CDC and the state DHHS when we come back next. Yes, I'm going to ask you to come back again. I'm so sorry. You can pick a date tonight or we can talk about it later, but I'm suggesting that you could schedule either the 23rd or the 30th of August to evaluate a more current situation before we start the school year. You could also decide to hold a meeting on one of those nights instead of in September, instead of in addition to in September. Even though it doesn't always seem like it, I try to be sensitive to your schedules. And then I'll buzz through this and you can come back. But on the next slide, my third recommendation is that we continue to look at a remote option while we're conducting a new survey. Again, if that number of families who say, well, if you do require masks, there are 150 of us who don't want to send our kids, and if you don't require masks, then there are 150 of us who don't want to send our kids. 150 is too many for the option I've been looking at, and it would require us to look back at a plan like last year's, which I don't think anybody wants to do. But if the number is 20 or 30 or something like that, one way or the other, that might be manageable, and I think I can bring you at least whether or not there's a good realistic option that could provide something for those families. And I am going to assume, although I'll verify it, that VLAX is not going to have availability for us. But I'll make sure by the time we meet again. I just think if we can provide an option for those families, it gives you an easier path toward one decision or another. And then finally, although if you've been paying attention, this probably doesn't need to be said, don't expect help. You're going to make these decisions, I'm sorry, but you are, and you're not going to, I predict, I'd love to be wrong, but I predict you are not going to get a mandate from the governor or specific guidance from DHHS. On July 21st, I was in a conference call with the DHHS chief epidemiologist for New Hampshire, who said, I quote, "There are no requirements for implementation of prevention strategies at schools," unquote, and he said, quote, "Face mask use will continue to be contentious and should be implemented based on local decision making," unquote. That seems pretty clear. So the ball is in your court. Sorry.
So as far as the meeting date, I'd like to, we have that on the agenda already towards the end of the meeting, so let's think about it until then and decide at the end of the meeting what dates might work best for you. Would anybody like to make a motion on this? I'm inclined to take Tim's advice and wait, except for potentially the lunch item. Would that help with planning to try to make a decision tonight? Or would it be okay that close to the start of school?
That's a hard question.
Can we just
Is it-
decide about plexiglass and nothing else about lunch? Couldn't we just decide to authorize them to purchase
we have some,
plexiglass
but not enough.
regardless?
Okay.
I don't think we'd have to.
What was your answer?
So my answer really is, other than I don't know what's better, is my plan with my team anyways is to do both.
Okay.
It'd be nice not to, but I just have a feeling like if I do one, the world's going to change, something's going to happen, and I'm going to
Yeah.
wish I had of. So I mean, really, I know it's such a tough decision, and I don't want to.
So you're okay with a game time decision, basically?
With what?
Game time decision.
I am.
Okay.
We're a tough building here, and we prepare. So it wouldn't change my plans so much because I'm still gonna have that. I'm someone that I think most of you know at this point. I like to have a backup plan in place for those unknown things, and so my plan would be to have the backup anyways. So
Okay.
I appreciate it, but I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I am not sure you need a board vote to order plexiglass. You guys should go ahead and do that.
No, we
if
can do
you feel like
that.
you should have that.
No problem.
Are there any members of the board who would like to make a motion around this, other than sort of waiting until the next meeting?
I make a motion that we take his recommendation and wait until the next meeting,
I second that.
pending parent involvement, surveys, public input,
As well.
other statistics. I think the parents probably want an answer sooner than August 30th, but I'm away on the 23rd. I think you are too, so.
I'm away for both.
I only suggested those because they're Mondays and you usually meet on Monday. We work every night.
I'd be
Yeah, it wouldn't
agreeable
have
to
be a
before the
Monday for me,
23rd.
so
I'm sorry,
It
Lynn.
is tough for me.
Do we want to set, is everybody ready to talk about dates? I was going to wait till the end of the
Yeah,
meeting,
I know,
but do you want to?
I second it.
Ann did, okay. Okay, well, let's postpone the date discussion until the end of the meeting, and then, so we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion on just holding the plan for a couple weeks? Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Okay. It wasn't supposed to be like this year.
I do have one more thought, though,
Yeah.
to ask. It's a question for Tim. At what point will you have more concrete information to offer to parents as, part of the decision on the remote possibility? I mean, I would think we would need to include that in a survey also.
Yep.
But what information can you actually provide in, as far
Yeah,
as details?
so what I can provide, and will, is when we phrase the question, it'll be along the lines of, if we could offer a synchronous, online, age-appropriate class for your, I mean, what it would look like is, let's say we had 4 third graders whose parents said, regardless of the decision the board has made, one way or the other, I don't want to send my kids now, right, for any reason. Those 4 students aren't a class, right? That's very difficult to staff. We learned that last year, no matter how we tried to do it at different elementary schools. Those 4 third graders would be added to a cohort of other third graders from around the country. Their teacher might be in Michigan. We would be procuring essentially a contracted service to provide services for those students temporarily. It might require a trimester or a semester commitment. That's one of the things that we need to nail down. And again, if the number were small enough, it might be an option. If the number's 100, 150, I think it doesn't work. Yep.
All right. Next topic, emergency operation plan.
The boards are required to approve revised EOPs every year, and then they get submitted to the Department of Education. Did anything actually change in it?
Just over the audit, something with the fire drill, but it was an easy change. That was it. It was nothing.
In my name.
Yes. Oh, and an updated with the church, and then also with the with Chief Heath. We'll just need to sign off on that.
Looking
I
for,
didn't understand what changes the changes are. And is that something we need to
we
look at?
couldn't hear your microphone very well,
Oh.
John.
So in the EOP, really, the thing,
Uh-oh.
I think it just died.
Uh-oh, we're in
It was
trouble
working
now.
great. All right, I can go super loud, and I can go into Tim's. So as far as the EOP, there was something, and off the top of my head, I would have to find it with the fire drill. It was minor. It was just it was a change, and it was a literal copy paste from the state into ours. That was it with the fire drill, and other than that, it's updated signatures for an MOU for the church, and then also with the police department. The church one is already signed and set to go, and I'm not sure about the police department one yet. I think that one waits until board signs. Check one. Oh, I'm working on it. Thank you.
Do we have a motion on the EOP?
I don't know. I'm not a fan of approving, you know, a plan that, where there are revisions and we don't see them. I mean, if it were just signatures, that would be
Yes,
okay.
it's there.
But where we don't have it in front of us, I don't know how we can make a motion.
I agree.
It's in the drive?
Yep. As well as the revision that was suggested is also there, marked in the end,
Oh, I
at the
didn't see
very
it in
end.
the
It's
drive. I
all
didn't
there.
realize we had that
I
many
didn't see it
pieces
there either, but
going
we'll
on.
look again.
Huh, I
But
didn't
I
see it
believe
either,
if
though.
we don't have that EOP
Yeah,
signed,
did
we
you see
can't
that
open.
in the drawer?
So,
So John's pointing out that it does need to be approved so that we can open school.
We
Okay.
have to do that, yes.
Where,
We have to open
I'm
school.
trying to find it in the drive.
What's it labeled, Deb?
Be under the school board team, if you go into the,
That's okay.
I got the 1819.
or if you search for the word emergency, usually
I did,
searching.
and
Search and
I
drive,
got-
yeah,
I
it's
got
just
it
see
2
if
years ago.
emergency comes up.
Yeah, it would be great to have all those in like in a folder, Deb, because when it gets to be pieces, and we don't know what all the pieces are, I didn't know that we had made this many pieces in
So
here.
the emergency response plan is in the drive right here. 21, 22. Did you find it, Karen?
No.
I don't have it either.
I
Well,
just put
can't find it.
emergency in the search, and it came up.
EOP.
Yeah, I did too. Last month.
I'm the least tech savvy person too, come on, Karen.
Yeah, it's right,
Much
it's
more
right
tech
here. I have
savvy.
it on here.
Maybe it's. So what was the change again, Tom?
It was, let me
Emergency
find-
response plan, 2021,
21,
Alton
22?
Central School EOP.
Yep.
2021,
I don't even know how to search.
8.9.21.
Yeah, I'm only seeing the 1819.
It was, I have it, it's at the very end, 132, it was RSA 189-64. The plan shall provide at least 4 of the currently required number of fire evacuation drills shall be emergency all hazard response drills, of which at least one shall test emergency response to an armed assailant. So,
So that was on page 132?
this is on 132.
Okay. So let me, I take your word for it.
No, I don't even, I can't.
The
find
EOP
it.
I'm not gonna
is
scroll
huge.
anymore. Is that
Yeah,
the
if
only
you don't mind.
change, other than
That's it.
signatures?
So,
That
I
seems
searched
pretty
emergency
simple.
and I'm not getting it. Oh, I
Oh,
found it.
right there.
It says EOP, that's why.
How about we consider approval tonight, but sort of a revisit with a summary next meeting, so we can just sort of move the meeting along?
There's only one change. though.
Yeah, if that's a change,
It's
And it's in
I'm
there.
fine, I just hadn't seen it anywhere.
It's
in the
132,
Documents.
page 132.
So yeah, the only change is that if you look at page 132, it shows what it is and where it is, and that was it.
Okay, I make a motion, we approve the emergency operation plan for 21-22 as amended and presented.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And it might be good, now that we have, that screen is really nice, and you can read everything really well, so we could just sort of scroll through that kind of stuff at the meeting too, and have it up there for,
Karen
I just made the motion.
Who seconded?
Carol, Karen and Carol.
Yeah, and I think it would be helpful, because stuff can get kind of scattered in the drive, so if we have a folder for the meeting, like if we went everything for this date's
Yeah, that's
meeting.
nice, yeah.
Because we also don't have a list of what's supposed to be there, so if we don't know what to look for, it's hard sometimes. If they could be in a folder for the date, that'd be great.
Not that you've all been moving offices or
Yeah.
anything stressful this summer at all. All right, 21-22 handbooks. So this gets into the grading discussion we had. So as a reminder, we approved handbooks earlier in the summer, I believe, with the exception of these particular changes around report cards and grading, which we asked to be brought back to us. So, John, could you give us a summary of the changes?
Yep, so, thanks, those are my summaries. Basically, the summaries are as directed at the last, at the June meeting, that the handbooks would stay the same. The only difference would be that the standards-based grading would extend up to the 5th grade now that it's self-contained this year, and that the traditional grade would accompany the standard grades for grades 6 through 8, as it has in previous years.
We had a pretty long
Right. we talked-
presentation last time. Can you speak to how you came to that decision between the last meeting and this meeting, and is there anything?
To keep it as simple, that's what you told us to do, so that's what we
Okay.
did.
Seems so simple to me.
All right. Did you have a question, Ann?
No.
Okay. All right, and then we have a Chromebook item.
Do we have to vote on these handbooks?
Yeah, I think if you're okay, we'll just do them both
Okay.
together. Students will be allowed to bring their Chromebook home for school use with a loaner form, basically.
Is there a restriction on the grade?
Yeah, it's actually
Oh,
all
sorry.
grades. It's gone from grades 5 to 8 to all grades.
I was so onto the grades thing. That was because before last year, we were not one-to-one Chromebooks to student, and now we are. So
Okay.
it's just the only change is now that, well, they've been doing it anyway, so it's legit in the school, in our handbooks now that all of the
So
students
all
can bring them home.
students will continue to take Chromebooks back and
You
forth.
got it.
Okay. Great. So I think we're ready for a motion on these.
So I make a motion that we accept the changes to the student handbook for 2021, 2022.
A second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And the faculty staff handbook?
Yep, that just reverted back to original. There were no,
Did
Same
we
thing, it
approve
reflects
that?
the grading.
yeah.
Okay.
It's-
Oh,
it's-
gotcha.
It's all
Okay.
back to what it was.
Okay.
So we need a motion for that?
Yeah.
I make the motion that we accept the faculty and staff handbook as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. This one went out. Oh, it's back. I didn't do it. Okay, personnel? Somebody would like to take the motions?
Yeah, so I move we accept is this working? I move we accept the hires of Elizabeth Hill as sped teacher, Jody Dong as Title I reading assistant, and Mindy Supri LaPlan as Title I math assistant.
A second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. And I move we accept Russ Perrin as athletic director in a continued position.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we are at our second public input. If anybody has any input to give, come on up. Usually we have a microphone. Maybe you could borrow Heidi's right there. If you could just state your name. Sorry.
How you doing? My name's Jason English. You know, I did come here to talk about face masks. I'm just gonna hold this so I'm not bending down and I can actually see you guys. But yeah, you guys just said that we're not gonna talk about face masks, but yet we just talked about face masks for 45 minutes, so I'd like to talk about face masks. Like to make sure that we all understand that according to our superintendent's numbers here, that we have put our children through this madness for 13 cases. Is that right? For the whole year, we had 13 cases. And it's very important that we understand that when our children are developing, that they need to see our faces. They need to see their faces. They need to understand empathy. They need to understand kindness. They need to understand all that, and they get that by looking at us, okay? It's downright abuse. You are mentally abusing our children when you force them to wear a face mask. As far as any sort of vaccine goes, no, they're not allowed to do it for 12 years. Younger kids, 12 years to 18, especially boys, with the Johnson & Johnson, they're getting enlarged hearts. You guys, this is worth knowing that we've discovered neurological disorders with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We've discovered that there's enlarged hearts with young boys. We're discovering there was another blood clotting disorder with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but it's safe. It's going to protect you from COVID. Now, with the children, something else that we also heard from the Department of Health experts is that autoimmune people can't spread it. Okay, so if these kids are not developing symptoms, then they can't spread it, period. And it's just, you guys are vaccinated, right? Everybody's vaccinated that wants a vaccine. What are you worried about? The Delta variant, it's still COVID. It's still protecting you from COVID, right? You might have to get a booster if you so choose. But I'd also like to point out that in North Carolina, they just did a study that shows that a natural immune person who caught it, recovered, it has a 6 times stronger rate than somebody that's been vaccinated. There's one in Cleveland, there's one in North Carolina. All these studies are coming out, and we need to start looking at that. We need to also start looking at the other effects that we're putting our children through, whether it's depression, whether it's drug addiction, whether it is anything else that is more than 13 cases of a flu virus, of a respiratory virus. Now, yes, if you look at the studies, in Maine, 82 and a half years old is the median average for somebody that died. 80, that's not our kids, okay? And that's not even our teachers. Our teachers are like 40, 44 tops as the median age. Okay, we have got to stop putting our children through this. Everybody's sitting side by side right now. Nobody's got a problem with doing that, but we're going to have a problem. We're going to put our kids in a bubble again. COVID is not going away. We are going to live with COVID-19 for the rest of our lives, okay? So whatever proposals we're going to sit here and talk about for the next meeting and what we're going to do to our children, we need to understand that we should be planning on this for the next 10 years. This is going to be the new way moving forward on how to teach our children, because this ain't going away. You have 3 vaccines to choose from. We have this thing called natural immunity with those that catch it, right? We have got to stop this. We have got to stop putting our children through this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jason, thank you for keeping it succinct. As you were talking, I was just remembering, it's been a long time since we've had public input in person. So, and you did not go over the limit, so I'm not at all calling you out, but I just did want to remind everybody that we have and I can't even remember if it's 3 or 5 minute
I think it's, yeah. I can't
typical
remember
limit
either.
on public input.
Because some of us were long-winded.
It just seemed like a good time to remember that. Any other input?
Hi there, I'm Amy Osmer. One thing, I know that decisions aren't being made as far as mask mandates and things like that, but just something to think about is that if, I know that 5th grade is a large number next year, I don't know what the class sizes are for next year. I know my daughter, who's going to 3rd, is now instead of 2 groups, I believe in 3, so I know her class size is definitely smaller. Something to think about is maybe if we can keep that 3 to 6 feet distance, if those kids can take off their masks. I work in another school district, that's how it was over there. I was able, as their teacher, to see their expressions. They could see mine as long as we kept that distance. And that's a huge piece as far as being a connecting teacher to your students, student to student. So if we can, in classrooms, keep that distance and allow them to take their masks off, I think it will be really huge. And again, I don't know where your decision lies, but for me as a teacher, as a mom of 2 kids next year, I would love for them to have that opportunity to take their masks off. If they're not, like if the teacher is instructing and far away, or, in that safe distance. The kids are in safe distances. Let them take their masks off. But of course, obviously, as the teacher's coming over, they're working in small groups, put the masks on. But that's just something to think about as trying to find a compromise. I love the idea of the surveys. I think having parent feedback and input is going to be huge. So I appreciate the fact you guys are doing that. So,
Amy,
thank you.
thank you. Can I just
Yeah.
clarify, ask a question? Was this in place all school year?
Yes.
For your district last year? Your
Yes.
school? Okay, interesting.
So our district did start off hybrid in the younger grades, but when I was in, it was, my desks were 5 to 6 feet apart, and the kids could take their masks off at their desks.
Okay.
So when they were independently working, they did not have a mask on. But, of course, as soon as I started walking, and they were so good, and granted, I teach 5th grade, but I know these kids are adaptable. I can still see my 3rd grader being as responsible, and that comes from the parents, that comes from the teachers, teaching them properly. Like, if somebody's coming over, another adult, our principal would walk in the door, and those kids knew to put their masks on. They were so respectful, and that just comes from teaching them how to be respectful of others. So it can be done. So that's all.
Thank you. We
You're welcome.
appreciate that
Thank you.
input. Any other public input? Do we have some online? Okay.
So Jennifer Collins asks, will there be a discussion about removing masks while seated? If they must have to wear masks depending on the data closer to the start of school?
We
So I
don't
think-
typically answer questions during public input, but Jen can probably hear me, correct? Or did she email that? Okay. Okay. So Jen, that's definitely a factor that we'll consider.
Steve had his hand up. Steve had his hand up.
Somebody else.
Oh, I didn't see you back there, Steve. Come on up.
Hey folks, how you doing? Steve McKnight here. Just got some notes that I've taken. First of all, I want to thank everybody for all the work you folks did last year. Unbelievably successful year. And I was pessimistic at first, but it worked out really well because of the job that you guys all did. And I think a lot of it had to do with the evolution of thought throughout the school year. Things changed as we learned more about the science, as we learned more about risk mitigation and things that could be done. And, I think we're at the point where we have to keep that in mind going forward. We did see very low cases throughout the year, and I think one of the reasons is because we had masks. The thing is that I'm going to agree with my neighbor here, Mr. English, in that COVID's not going away, unfortunately. And it's not going away simply because we have so many people opposed to the vaccine, and we have so many people refusing to wear masks. It's not going away. So we have to plan that it's going to be here. And frankly, I don't agree with the concept that this is causing emotional damage to our children. It causes emotional damage to my kid is when he wakes up at night thinking somebody's going to come through the door and shoot him. So we're doing active shooter drills. That's having a pretty big impact on children, in my opinion. It's important to remember the timeline for vaccinations. If we made the decision today, we would be very unlikely to start school with very many 12-year-olds or under who are vaccinated. And it's also important to remember the national average right now is less than, I believe, 30% of those under 12 are vaccinated or are taking advantage of that. I also don't believe the CDC has issued any guidelines for people who are unvaccinated to be in indoor settings without masking. I believe that what they're talking about now is they're saying that if you want to be, it's okay for vaccinated people to be together indoors if there's not high or substantial community spread, which, welcome to Belknap County, we're kind of there. I don't believe the CDC has ever said anything about unvaccinated people still being allowed to congregate indoors without masks, unless I missed something on that one. And lastly, I just want to say that, it's my kid's right to be in school, and it's other kids' rights and their parents' rights to not vaccinate their children if that is the law and that's their decision. But their decisions to not vaccinate and also not mask shouldn't affect my children's safety and health. So, anyway, thank you again for having us. We appreciate being back.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online? Good? All right. I'm going to close public input. That's the most public input we've had in a year, so it is great to see everybody coming out and giving their input.
We need to go into non-public.
I don't know that we do
Yes,
need
we
to go
do.
into non-public, okay.
So I make a motion, we go into non-public session per RSA 91-A:3K.
We will publish the
Second.
next meeting date through Facebook, and we'll have the school send it out, so you all can plan
Thank you
for it.
all.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is really great. All right, so non-public.
I just made the motion, so I want
Oh,
a second.
Second, okay. Carol?
Yes.
I'm a yes?
Yes.
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 Okay.